right? So algorithmic monoculture, try to say that 5 times fast. This is probably the most fancy language I will use throughout this whole presentation. So as Christian said, I'll go through the agenda first, sorry. So this talk's going to be roughly around 20 minutes. So we're going to go through some of the definitions of what it means, what do I mean by algorithmic monoculture, what is UI personalisation and what's the correlation between the two, some key takeaways and open it up to a QA. So hopefully I'm not going to bombard you with too much jargon. So small introduction. So this is me modelling our Weir Group hoodie. Thank you, Christian. You might have come across the former UX lead at Weir, Ryan Kane. So he's the one who's been pushing this initiative for merchandise, so I was very happy to be part of that day. So yes, I'm a full stack UX and UI designer. It's not a cop-out. I love a bit of the full spectrum of the industry. And yes, a lot of people have come up to me today to talk about metal. I do not look like a metalhead, but I have been to many mosh pits, and I've been hurt many times. But I do love musicals as well, so I'm a very complex person. So first off, I wanted to start with an exercise just to kind of gauge the room. So has anyone ever heard of the Capital Radio Thrice is Nice kind of game? So just in a nutshell, every day someone calls into the radio and says 3 words. And the radio presenter gives 3 words to the caller. And they have to follow with 3 new words associated to each. For example, if I were to say dinner, someone might say plate, another person might say time. So the object of the game is trying to come up with the exact same words. So I'm going to ask the audience, no one's going to have to speak, don't worry. If you can take in these 3 words, so human, screen, and focus. And I'm going to give you just a brief few seconds, something very quick fire, and I'm going to reveal my 3, the words that I feel are the appropriate next ones. So if everyone's locked it in, just give me a brief nod. Yep. So human being, screen reader, focus group. Did anyone match me at all? No one matched me. Would anyone like to actually give a different word that they use to accent the word human? Any volunteers? Yes? Interaction. I mean, very relevant. And I'm mad I didn't think about it, to be honest. Right, so what is an algorithm? I've tried to keep this at a high level without getting into too much jargon, but in a sense, an algorithm, as we know it within computing, has only really existed since the 1800s and was invented by a lady called Ada Lovelace. I absolutely love that name. And she wrote notes for a kind of analytical machine, something so crude. The machine never materialized, but the notes were actually the foundation to what we know about algorithms today. So algorithms are really just the logic as to how technology processes data, computes and solves problems and informs certain actions. And as you can imagine, AI heavily relies on algorithms to perform its own actions. So for example, if you were to give a prompt to an AI, it uses a decision tree. So you can imagine all these different branches are all different algorithms, and the AI takes that prompt, takes that data, and runs it through the roots, through the tree, through the branches to select the appropriate algorithm to meet that task. So you could actually equate that AI is a CMS for algorithms. It's where all these things are housed. It's ecosystem in a way. But what's a monoculture? So this one's up for debate. This is up for debate because it is quite a sociological concept. So originally this derives from an agricultural term, in which a farmer would only plant a certain type of crop. There's only one crop on this farmer's land. But when we're looking at this from a digital context or even a social context, This is about kind of isolated environments in which only certain ideas run wild and other ideas are somewhat ignored or even discouraged in a way. So monocultures can appear in a lot of different ways. So for example, your workplace, where you can experience what is known as a silo, in which a team goes rogue, they don't conform, they don't collaborate with the wider business. They've got their own workflows, their own ways of doing things, and they're not going to listen to anyone. You've got things like pop culture. So this is another concept within monoculture where it's not about small areas, it's about a larger, your larger perception on reality. So people actually say like the 90s is a monoculture because we all watched the same films that were called classics. We all watched the same type of media, we all did similar things. And that is kind of, we'll get to that a bit later, but that's slowly moved from that kind of flow. You've got your more traditional geographical monocultures, such as secluded human tribes, and your group chat, which you really hope doesn't get leaked. So how do these two concepts fit together? So in a nutshell, the algorithm tries to compute what a user is doing within your digital product. So say like Spotify, it's trying to analyze how you're engaging with certain content so they can already tailor and organize the next round of content for you. So really it's trying to analyze what you have done to then produce what you will like. So in this kind of way, a user interacts with the product, data is collected, the algorithm categorizes the user to say they fit this type of persona profile. The user receives targeted content, the user absorbs it, and it becomes a never-ending cycle. So you can see that the algorithm's basing on physical behaviors and interactions rather than trying to anticipate or challenge what the user has done previously. So how can this be bad? Because if algorithms are giving users content that is based on their own interactions, what could be bad here? So this can lead to echo chambers where these ideas, these behaviors are just constantly reinforced and not challenged. So this can be alarming, especially for people who have potentially in the past engaged with more extreme content, such as racist or sexist content, because instead of being challenged on it, the algorithm potentially is reinforcing that, potentially even encouraging it because you've engaged with it in some shape or form. Simply put as well, the algorithm can actually just get your profile wrong completely, and you just get the wrong content at the end of the day, meaning that your user experience isn't where it could be. And at the end, where you've been boxed into a monoculture, you can feel completely disconnected. You feel like only your ideas are the only ideas. You're in a room full of yes men. No one's challenging you, no one's making you grow. You're only getting spoon-fed everything that came before, really. Just new things in a different light. Old things in a new light, sorry. So imagine this, you're at a restaurant. You call the server, so you select a salad, something you don't usually do. Maybe you're going on a health kick, who knows? You've just decided you want the salad today. But the server comes over, takes your order, comes back with spaghetti carbonara. The server looks at you and says, you ate this dish 7 times in the last year, and 240 people in your demographic also ate this dish, so we think you're going to like it. You call the manager and say, this is outrageous, why are you not giving me what I asked for? But the manager just says, the server's right, we know what you like. So that kind of illustrates that algorithms sometimes don't pander to what a user's asking for, it just kind of quantifies based on previous data what they think the user needs or wants. So what's causing this? What is happening within our algorithms and even the AI tools? So this is an article from, and I'm going to butcher this surname, is Melissa Heckler, where she was exploring using a tool called Lensa, where you take a selfie, it then generates some variants of some artistic translations of that selfie. When Melissa put her image into this generator, it produced highly sexualized images, whilst her male research counterparts were getting astronauts, warriors, all sorts of really encouraging and strong images. And Melissa consulted with some AI training experts within this article, and the conclusion that she drew was, because this AI in particular was pulling from the internet, which is as you can imagine, a vastly biased data source, she concluded that if the data source is biased, the AI will be biased and it will produce biased results. So going back to the algorithm, if the algorithm's flawed in categorizing people inefficiently, it's just going to cause absolute mayhem. So how times have changed. So this is an analogy about movies. So this is a quote from Ian Schaefer, who worked in Hollywood in the 90s. He said in the 90s, every studio was analyzing what content there were in the cinemas. So they would say, right, Studio X is doing horror movies, Studio Y is doing action movies. This summer, we need to get a romantic comedy just to diversify what's on offer so that we can guarantee people are going to see our content and get box office sales. When it comes to the 2020s, algorithms have kind of replaced that structure in which Netflix is analyzing your usage. Instead of offering you diversity, it's offering you similarity. It's building upon what you've selected previously, meaning even though all the genres are there, and you can equate it to being in a cinema with all these options, there's just that much content in which you're not going to get challenged, you're not going to be given recommendations saying, I know you love horror movies, but I actually think you'll like this comedy for some reason. It's really difficult to organize an algorithm in such a way. But what does this mean for UI personalization? So UI personalization is quite a hot topic within the industry right now. It's about using machine learning to try to create adaptive user experiences and interfaces. For example, if we could analyze that someone took about an extra 5 minutes on average within a stepper journey, the AI could potentially produce a user interface that assists with a bit of a slower journey, a slower process, making it a little bit more accessible. But what are the pros and cons of this based on today? So the pro, and these are my interpretations, there could be wider applications of UI personalization through AI and machine learning. But for me, it seems like we've got an opportunity to explore how UI personalization can affect accessibility. So for example, imagine we could use an AI that would automatically, every time there was newly published WCAG guidance, that our design system referenced our brand guidelines and the new WCAG guidelines, and was able to adapt things appropriately so that we were always at that industry level. The hype cycle, so everyone's talking about AI. If you can prove AI can be used in your workflow, it's highly marketable. So you'll be able to get a lot of buy-in from your stakeholders. You'll be able to push a lot of projects if you embed AI within here. There's a lot of cons here, on the contrary. User data collection, so there's a lot of concerns around user privacy, because you can imagine how much data it would take to have a fully adaptive UI setup, in which every type of user was coming to your system, being able to adapt to that effectively. The granular level of data would be insane, and the data privacy laws would probably stop you in certain areas. Unethical user manipulation. This is where algorithms don't just quantify what a user does. There's always a business case, a business need that's woven into the recipe. Buy this, do this. There's always a jobs to be done at the high level for the business side of things, in which these things that are woven in can cause unethical manipulation, in which, say that I was to adapt my user interface using machine learning to suit someone with color blindness, but then it also made the buy now button 20 times larger. It'd be insane. But that's somewhat manipulation, because you're trying to push the user into a certain action which is highly unethical. and repetitive. You've got to remember that AI is getting trained on things that came before, and it's trying to predict things that can come after. But in a sense, a lot of these solutions that are going to come out of machine learning right now are going to be repetitive. It's based on patterns that it's getting fed. So if I say to a UI, give me a interface for a banking app, for a login for a banking app, it's going to give me probably the same generic thing 20 times, maybe a few variants, but there's not going to be innovation on top of it. There's going to be new user needs down the line. It's not going to fully cater to it in real time. So in conclusion, as I talked about originally, it seems like algorithmic monoculture is mostly to do with content. So this is more relevant to your social medias or even your information hierarchy within your digital tools. But if personalized content is anything like personalized functionality, there's huge problems here in which our AIs are biased, our algorithms are mixed in with business objectives, the messages are unclear, there's not a qualitative touch to bring context to the data. So in my opinion, I can't predict the future, but I feel that there's always going to be a need for that qualitative touch to add to whatever AI is producing. So it's not the solution, it's a tool that we can utilize to really benefit us from the quantitative side of things. So the key takeaways, so just a show of hands, has anyone ever thought about how an algorithm affects your digital product at all? Yeah, we've got one. Oh, no worries. So it's not something I thought about either. I found this topic out through doom scrolling on Medium. And I was like so intrigued. It was this kind of area of marginalisation. So I was like, how can we combat this? So understand your organisation, really understand where's their trajectory with AI, what is their business needs being embedded within these algorithms. You know, that can really affect how, say, even content is populated within your components, for example. It can really decide on the hierarchies. So for you to understand that would be able to understand the flow better and understand that AI is a tool, it's not the solution. It will always need contextual, always needs to be able to be refined after the fact. And people can't easily be quantified. Again, hammering that point on, qualitative data in our industry is always going to be needed. Whether we're using AI to produce more of the quantitative side is anyone's guess, but people are complex. We might not get it right. It's just being able to also look at the data, perform more research, and again, it's like that living, breathing document, just to say it's never complete. And that is me, guys. I know that was a lot of information, but is there any questions?